GLOBSEC Center for Democracy and Resilience, which focuses on countering any efforts that are trying to undermine democratic values, democratic processes, and the core democratic principles.
And those who have been at the GLOBSEC Forum already know that it has become a little tradition for us to come to the main stage and present the findings of our most popular and read report, GLOBSEC Trends.
So to make this more interesting, we have a short quiz for you. So if you could please take out your phones, those who have your phones with you, because we have prepared a quiz on Slido, and you can go either to the GLOBSEC app and select the Slido picture on there, and then the name of this stage, which is the Havel stage, and you will find the questions there, or you just scan this QR code.
And while you're doing that, let me tell you a bit about the GLOBSEC Trends. So it is a public opinion poll that we've been conducting since 2016 across Central and Eastern European countries. Every year, we focus on pressing issues in the CE region, but also in the transatlantic space.
And this year, we also tested the narratives that are used to undermine democratic values, processes, and the transatlantic unity, the narratives that are especially used prior to the elections, within the electoral campaigns.
All the questions are based on the GLOBSEC Trends, so if you read it, you have a bit of an advantage.
The questions we will be asking you aim to set the tone for the next session, Democracy in Europe Post-2024. 2024 was often referred to as the super election year, strongly affected also by populism, anti-system far-right parties gaining more power, including in the elections to the European Parliament we've had here in Europe in June. And so, hopefully, some of you were already able to log in and scan the QR code on the Slido, because the first question we have for you is right on the screen.
The exact question we asked was, to what extent do you agree or disagree that the European Union dictates my country what to do without us having a power to influence it?
So, to give you a bit of a hint, or not, Bulgarians believe the most in this narrative of the EU dictate. I'm looking at my Bulgarian friends right there, I'm sorry for that. But who is on the opposite side of the spectrum? So who believe this narrative the least?
I hope that you managed to cast your vote, so let's have a look at the results of the poll. Okay,
so most of you believe that it was Estonia, but actually it was Hungary.
Yes, indeed. Despite of, or maybe because of the open criticism of the European Union by the Hungarian administration and even intensive smear campaigns against the European Union and its representatives, Hungarians believe the least in the idea of the Brussels dictate.
And looking at the chart, we see that the narrative of the EU dictate is backed by a majority in most countries across the region. The only, actually, outlier here is Hungary, where the majority does not agree with this statement. But let's go to the next question and look whether this applies to other areas, other manipulative narratives as well.
So the second question we have for you to answer is, how many people in Central Europe, on average, believe that migrants coming from outside of Europe threaten their own identity and values? We specifically asked these questions about the migrants coming from outside of Europe because we had actually a specific question on migrants coming from Ukraine.
This information about migrants coming from countries from outside of Europe has been voiced in the election campaigns in numerous, if not all, CEE countries for years, despite the fact that actually most of them were never really that much affected by a migration wave outside of the immigrants coming from Ukraine. So let's see the results.
Yes, wow, correct. Yes, this time you voted correctly because the correct answer was 57%. So 6 out of 10 Central Eastern Europeans actually perceive these migrants as a threat.
And as you can see on the slide, only Latvia and especially Romania with 35% are outliers.
Yeah, I'm going to test your knowledge now, because did you know that in Czechia back in 2019, a then 71-year-old pensioner was sent to prison for 4 years for a terrorist attack? This is because he believed all those disinformation about hundreds of thousands of migrants coming to Czechia on trains. What happened was that he wanted to stop them. He cut down trees on train that's a bit of a tongue twister. He cut down trees on train tracks. He managed to derail 2 trains. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but this is the real example of how disinformation have real-life consequences.
And we can see that people across the region really believe it still. So let's go to the third question.
And the question is, which CE societies feel the most aware of far-right nationalism posing a threat to their own identity and values?
Yes, while the rise of the far-right parties has been observed in several European countries, how do Central and Eastern Europeans perceive the far-right? And which society is the most aware? Is it Czechia, Slovakia, Estonia, or Poland?
You know, Dominika, maybe next year we should actually inquire the respondents on whom do they perceive as a far-right nationalist. I mean, we might get some interesting insight, not only about the perceptions of the threat of far-right nationalism, but getting the perceptions of who are the far nationalists in respective countries.
Yes, that's a good idea. Let's do that. And also, if you have any feedback on the questions of the GLOBSEC trends, if you have any tips, you can come and find us. We'll be very happy to implement that as well. Okay, so let's see how you voted.
Yes, and looking at the results, I have to say that you once again voted incorrectly, because the correct answer is Czechia.
So, good job, Czech Republic. As we can see on the slide, despite the fact that people believe many of the narratives that are being spread by the far-right nationalists, many also perceive them as a threat in the region, which is a good sign.
However, as you can see also from the chart, a lot of respondents did not know how to respond to the question. As you can see, 30% in Lithuania and 25% in Latvia did not actually know whether or not to perceive far-right nationalists as a threat.
So what are the lessons learned for this year?
One of the most basic lessons learned we found out is that polarizing and disinformation narratives resonate in the region because, among others, they touch upon the most sensitive issues and play on the fears of the people.
Moving from this rhetoric requires courage to address sensitive issues by the key political representatives, and also a whole of society cooperation contributing to educated and resilient society capable to withstand such pressures.
But much more will be discussed during the next session on the future of democracy in Europe, which starts in just a moment with the moderator, Rob Cameron.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have
Enjoy.
a nice evening.
Hello, I'm Rob Cameron. I am the BBC's correspondent in Prague, reporting on the Czech Republic and Slovakia. It's a real privilege, a true honor for me to be leading this discussion on the success of the far right in the recent European elections and what that means for the future of society and democracy on this continent. We have assembled a stellar panel for you, 4 speakers of Parliament from 4 European countries. So please help me welcome them now. Markéta Pekarová Adamová, Nicolae Ciucă, Szymon Hołownia, and Lauri Hussar.
Hello.
So there are 8 billion people on this planet, and this year, a quarter of them had the chance to cast their vote in elections, from India to Indonesia, from the United States to the United Kingdom, and of course here in Europe. Not for nothing has this been called not just an election year, but the election year. Europe, of course, has already made its choice. I'm sure you'll remember there were apocalyptic predictions before the vote that we would see a surge of the far right in Europe, and that didn't really happen. Now, I think just under a quarter of the seats in the European Parliament are occupied by far-right, populist, Eurosceptic politicians, compared to a fifth 5 years previously. So, as has so often been said, the centre did hold just, but there are certainly lessons, and many say that it was a wake-up call for those politicians who do share European values, who do think that we have a common European future. And I don't think it's too much of an imposition to say that we have 4 of those politicians on stage with us today. So once again, Markéta Pekarová Adamová, she's the Speaker of the lower house of the Czech Parliament, the Chamber of Deputies, and she's also the leader of the liberal conservative Top 09 party. Markéta, welcome.
Thank you.
Nicolae Ciucă is the president of the Senate, or the upper house of the Parliament of Romania, and he is the head of the Christian Democratic National Liberal Party. Hello to you again, also Nicolae. Szymon Hołownia is the Marshal of the Polish Sejm, which is the lower house of Parliament, and he leads the centre-right Poland 2050 party. And Lauri Hussar is the president of the Riigikogu. I'm sure I didn't say that right, Lauri.
It's totally correct.
Totally correct. There you go. Full marks to me and Estonia. And that is the Parliament of Estonia, and he was, until last year, the leader of the liberal Estonia 200 party. So we want this discussion to be as interactive as possible. There will be a chance to pose questions on a regular basis. And we can do that, you can do that either using the Slido facility in the GLOBSEC app or here in the room when we get to passing around the microphone. So let's jump right in. And before I ask the first question, start with a bit of that audience participation, if you do have your phones on you, and I imagine most people do. Before we start talking about the rise of the far right and what that means, I wanted to talk just a little bit about terminology. I've just said far right, but that label seems to have gone from a political scientist label to talk about a very specific segment of politics, i.e. on the right, to being a kind of lazy journalistic shorthand or umbrella term for anybody that we don't like, right? It's used, I've seen it used in newspaper articles after the European elections to talk about everybody, ranging from neo-fascists to far-left populists. So I'd like you to help me out and think of a better word, because I think that far-right is obviously it's too narrow, but other words are too broad. So I would like to know what word you think we should be using, or indeed if we should stick with far-right, populist and Eurosceptic. So the question is there a more accurate word, or maybe 2 words, that we could use to describe all these disparate political forces And you can do that in the GLOBSEC app on Slido or the website, where you'll find a live poll. It's a word cloud, so let your imagination run riot. So, record numbers of people this year voted for parties that reject the European consensus on supporting Ukraine, on the EU's Green Deal, on so many other issues. My first question to you, and I'll begin with you, Markéta. Do you think this is a genuine ideological schism that essentially means that a quarter of our European fellow citizens are now dissidents? Or was it just the chance to give your government and your government and your government and your government a good kicking, which is what voters love doing at every election?
First of all, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks to organizers for having me. It's not easy to describe what's going on, because I think we sometimes are more skeptical than the situation is. And the result of the elections is one of this skeptical side of comments or analysis we have read many times. But I always say when you start politics, you must be optimist, and I'm a long life optimist. I think, gentlemen, you agree, only optimists can be in politics such a long time, because it's not easy to stay and to be able to just be in this environment. And that's why I always feel or see the bright side of the result. And we have many things witnessed during last years. Of course, very important is how we assess the situation in Ukraine. And for example, in this case, look at us. We were so skeptic about Ukrainians at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Be very honest to ourselves. How many of us would expect that them to be so resilient, them to be so brave, and that we are here 2.5 years later, and the situation on the battlefield, of course, is not optimistic always, but at the beginning, everybody and even experts were talking, 1 week, 2 weeks. So these were the expectations.
But support for them is going down, especially among voters of these parties.
But why I am mentioning it's that we should really evaluate the situation how it is, not to be just so skeptic about, and be able to really be more confident about ourselves. And this is the same with the results of European elections. Look, here in Czech Republic, Czechia, you have one very strong movement called ANO. This party was in government 2 terms, and you can see, okay, they are now connected in their group with Orban, with other parties, and they are called Patriots for Europe. They are not patriots, but they call themselves patriots. And what happened to them? They have absolutely no results for themselves.
For now.
For now.
I mean, they're not in the council yet. Once they're in the council,
there is this sanitary corridor or something like that you can point on it. And this is how it ended up with them. So no influence. No influence.
Right, so you're clearly
so this
glass half full.
Last sentence, I know I speak too long, but last sentence, I think always you can, as we say in our country, you can look to the glass and say it's half empty or half full. And this is always about only you're thinking about. And of course, there are lessons learned, and of course, we should be aware and so on. But at the same time, we should be maybe more confident about ourselves and be able to just say, okay, we can do it. We have many challenges to overcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Nicolae, your glass is literally just under half full, but when you look at the results of the European elections and the rise of the far right, are you an optimist? Are you a pessimist?
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm very honored to be on the stage with this remarkable lady and gentleman, and with you as well, Robert. So I think we should be moderate optimistic.
Moderate optimistic, okay.
It's normal, because if we are looking now, what we are doing now here, analyzing the results of the last European parliamentary elections, and now we are surprised. All those forces, as you named the disparate political forces, they didn't appear in the last months or in the last year.
Very true.
So they appeared many years ago. But unfortunately, the political leaders did not pay attention to them. So you're right. The final results shows that the European people still trusting those democratic forces, central and center-right and center-left political parties. But if we are looking to how much those disparate forces grow and how many seats they fill in the European Parliament, I think we should be not that optimistic. That's why I am saying we should be moderate, because we still having time to do our best in order to not let them growing. Because looking to the last two elections, we don't have, I mean, it's going to be a mistake to count the seats and to look to the percentages. I think we have to look to the trends. So
right.
If we
the trend is clearly up.
So if we look to the trends, all the central politicians, right and left, should go back to the people, should reconnect with the people, should reevaluate the situation on the ground, and to come up with those policies, with those solutions, which are really expected by the people.
Right, let's talk about those in a few more. So I just want to move on a little
one, you ask, may I answer that? How we call political? At the end?
Let's answer it when the audience have given their thoughts, then we can come back and...
I have an answer for that.
Okay, great. Well, I will park that thought. Szymon, pessimist, optimist, show me your glass. That's about half, isn't it?
Pragmatic realist. You know, when you mentioned the glass, I was taking care of it, that it should be, you know, like unrecognizable. If I'm more half, it is more empty or full. You know, I think that we have some strong fundament to name ourselves here in this room, but also in our politics, maybe not optimists or pessimists, but realists, you know, pragmatists. When you will look to the past and you will remember what we, maybe not all, but we in Poland, what we thought like a year ago, we were afraid that this march of far right will cover the whole Europe and the whole world, and there will be no space for modern liberal democracy in our country, in different countries. And look what happened, right? Yep. Of course, there are some worries right now in France. Right? Of course, we are very worried about what will happen in the next regional election, local election in Germany. But look what happened in Spain, look what happened in Poland, right? Look at the government here in Slovakia, look what's going on in other countries, in Baltic states, for instance. Look what's going on in the United States. You know, half a year ago, we were all sure that Trump is going further and nothing can stop him.
Right, before I go to Lauri, is that our fault, the media's fault? Is it us in the media relentlessly peddling this pessimistic, doom-laden message, or not?
Well, thank you, and let me start with a joke, actually, that I'm very glad.
Please start with the joke.
We could analyze the European Parliament elections from the national parliament's perspective. That's it doesn't happen very often, so I'm very glad for the course of the opportunity. And actually, talking about the situation where we are in a moment, I don't see it in so black colors at all, as I think there hadn't been an earthquake, as we have a functioning European Parliament.
Was there a tremor?
We were going to have...
Maybe not an earthquake. Was there at least a tremor? Did the earth move a little bit?
I see. I will going to say that we had one earthquake in Europe in this year, but I will explain it afterwards. And actually, we will going to have the functioning European Commission, and we have to be realists. We came through 3 crises. Starting from COVID, then energy crisis, then the war in Ukraine. It is too much, and therefore those ones who had very simple messages were more or less successful in here. So therefore, of course, there is a necessity for so-called mainstream parties to explain more and to be more active in here, explaining the politics, why one or another tough decision is necessary. But I don't see it in so dark colors. And talking about earthquake, we actually saw in this year one earthquake, and that found place actually in one island called Great Britain. And actually the elections in UK were earthquake, and just now if we'll see actually what is people's position towards Brexit and leaving EU, then in a moment 57% of the population is saying that that was a mistake, Brexit was a mistake, and 70% from young generation is saying that leaving EU was a mistake. And I think this is an earthquake, and this will going to make a huge change in UK and also in relations between UK and European Union.
Okay.
And this is something really which is an earthquake. And talking about the word you've asked, that if we are thinking that the left-right scale is more about economical, then let's talk about liberal and conservative. And if we're talking
we'll come back to the word
far
and the
right,
definition.
then we could use the word ultra-conservatives.
Right, okay.
So.
I think, Szymon, you wanted to say something.
I just want to add a few words to what Lauri just said, because it was not only 3 crises, it was actually 5 of them, because we should add to this financial crisis, the huge financial crisis we experienced not so far ago, and also climate change we are experiencing right now, very strong. And there was a poll, I don't know, last year it was made in Europe, throughout Europe, and they asked people about crises, about political views, but about the most important crises they can identify around them. And the results were completely different, because for France, for instance, for French people, and from, I would say, people from Denmark, it was the climate change. From the guys from the south of Europe, from Italy, from Portugal, it was this financial crisis. In Poland, it was the crisis with the war with Ukraine, on Ukraine. And on the other part, migrational crisis. So these divisions to left and right, to far left, even this preferred division of politicians of hope and politicians of fear, they're completely useless. We have tribes of crises right now in Europe, and the root of the problem is always very different. Then the effect, on the political scene can be quite similar, but the root of the problem, of the frustration, of giving the power to people who want to offer you simple answers for complex questions, they are completely different. And we can name it. We can see that Europe is a very complicated piece of cake today.
Yes, it certainly is. Very briefly, Markéta and Nicolae, before we go to our word cloud.
Yeah, on my mind
Briefly,
came
please.
that we are framing a lot of things as a crisis. No, isn't it maybe using this word and framing it as a crisis? It's not sometimes really helpful, and it's overused.
Okay.
All right.
Nicolae?
The only thing is not only to look to the this overlapping and successive crises, it's also about how much the people lose their trust on the mainstream politicians, period.
Okay, we're definitely going to come to that, because that's a big part of it. Before we do, can we perhaps get the word cloud up on the screen, if we have a cloud? Certainly clouds outside. I'm not sure if there are a cloud. Okay, right, so extremists and populists. All right, very interesting. You can see the ones that also make the cut. Populist, I was, not for the first time, I received I was on the receiving end of the Václav Klaus death stare when I used the word populist a few years ago. He hated the word. He said, I hate this term populist. It's so vague. It doesn't really mean anything. You know, popular, yes, but populist, no. I don't know. That's just my view. Looking at that, extremists, populists, your response. Populist, extremist, combining the two.
Actually, to
What
be
do you
honest,
think, Lauri?
the word populism is not always bad.
Because, yes, that's the point, isn't it?
Because if we are talking about populism, it is that means that we are talking from the position of the people. It's coming from the Latin word populus, and therefore it can't be always bad. But the politicians,
very good.
Politicians actually did it or made it actually a bad word, because it's with the demagogical methods they're using in their populist politics, they've turned it bad. But in the other hand, it is not bad actually to talk with the people with the words they can understand. So this is actually this is a contradiction here.
Right. Okay. Any of you would also like to respond to the
Yeah, I think that
debate about terminology and taxonomy?
Of course, it's always useful to use proper words for proper things and to match it in a good way. I think in the audience we will have many specialists or experts on political science and so on. So it's always useful to know. But at the end of the day, of course, extreme or far right or far left is not a circle. They are, so close to each other, and they have similar programs. And I think that right now we in our countries are not facing such challenges that we can say, oh, this is a left-wing solution and this is a right-wing solution and so on. It's much more to the basics. It goes to the basics of the democracy. And some of our colleagues in the parliament, they are no Democrats, we can call it like that, and they are not supportive to democracy. So there is not only a difference between right and left, or between liberalism, between conservative people, but I would say much more important nowadays is who is anti-democracy, who is for democracy, and who believes in these basics. And this is important for, I think, in the European Union as well, that this is based on these core values, and they include democracy, freedom, rule of law, human rights. And I think this is important to protect, to keep, and we can see politicians who are going against these values.
Okay, Szymon, I think you have something to say. I'd just like to say perhaps Viktor Orbán was actually quite helpful in this, because when he talks of an illiberal democracy, and being an illiberal Democrat, he's kind of nailing it on the head, isn't he? If what we do and what most of the world agree is the right thing is liberal democracy, then the opposite of it is illiberal democracy, perhaps. Szymon.
Before entering the politics, I used to be a journalist for 25 years. For 12 years, I worked in kind of I would say show business, because I was hosting Polish Got Talent. And the one thing I can see, and I say it very clearly, there's that these extremists, we can call them, they are very good in gaining attention. They are very good in TikTok. They are very good on this art of doing like-driven politics, right? They are very good in short answers, short questions, in giving audience the emotions. And of course, we are right now in this liberal democracies in this situation that it's just too long for people. This 4 years, it's good for governing. It's good for, arranging things in the state, because the state is always like a big transatlantic. You are moving the steering wheel and it's going in different direction after a year or two. So for the governing, it's a good perspective. But for people who are, used to make thousands of choices every day, it's too long. So they are going to the internet, they are voting in the internet, and they are using these platforms just brilliantly. This is one of the most important things I've learned so far in politics. It's not only about being right. It's about being right and having majority.
Okay.
And we are very good sometimes in these liberal democracies in being right. Yes, we are right in a lot of things we are saying, but we are not ready to go to people, to listen to their emotions, to feel these emotions with them, to talk with them in the language they understand. So there is huge space for the new type of politics, I think, which is getting born on our very eyes right now, here in Central Europe.
I just want to go briefly to Nicolae and then...
Very briefly. I will call them manipulators.
Manipulators, okay.
Because what they are doing, they find the breach and they take advantage of the people issues, people problems. We are not having the courage to speak and to fight with them. And on the other hand, also, they are very easy to be manipulated. They are not only taking advantage of the internal problems, they are very easy to be manipulated by the external forces which wants to break our unity and our cohesion. And you know what I'm speaking about. Yeah. So that's why I'm calling them manipulators.
Okay, thank you. Lauri.
In the very beginning, you asked whether the rise of the far right is a guilt of the media also, and I would say that the responsibility of the media is very high, and there is a theory which I don't support, but I understand the elements from there, is that if media is always paying attention for the provocations they make. Then they will get the tribune they are not worth of. And actually the people are starting more to follow what they are doing, and then in the end they are finishing in their social media platforms or their own media platforms, which is actually the result we don't want. So therefore I think the responsibility of the media is very high. Media must actually control always what they are publishing, why they are publishing, and is it all balanced in a way that it's really is made according to the journalistic rules.
But if Viktor Orbán says, I'm going to Moscow to talk to Putin about Ukraine, we can't ignore it.
We can't ignore it, yes, this is true. But in the other hand, of course, we should bring all the other perspectives also into this case. And as a former journalist, I would say that if there is two sides, then take the third one also as an analyst, and then you have already a perfect story.
But there is a slight, trick in it. Because when I was a journalist, I was a columnist, I was writing books and doing things, there were these colleagues in Polish journalism who said, but okay, I can put, of course it's exaggeration, I can put Hitler and Anne Frank at one table, in the studio, and let them discuss. There are different sides of the story, right? This is the right of the audience to listen to all the stories. I won't be taking any place. Hey, they are some guys. we shouldn't invite to our studios. And let me say that there is one medicine, there is one cure for far-right populism and extremism. It's turnout, and we show it last October in Poland. 75% of people. So let people be engaged into the democratic process, and we will make this extremism just out.
But
Lauri,
Szymon,
very quickly,
these
and then
contradictional formats doesn't work if we want to have the public debate. We don't have to bring the people from here and here together. We should take the people from here, and probably the result is better. And this is the responsibility of the media.
Absolutely.
Nicolae, I think you wanted to say something.
Can't
Of course,
agree more.
you touch upon all these aspects regarding the role of media, and you are experts. I do really appreciate everything you said about it. If we have to consider media, as you said, to be able to deliver any kind of information. Media should keep the balance in between all the actors. So I don't have any problem with media, but there is the other channels to share the information, which is the social media, so nobody can control what's happening there. And I think we should see what we have to do in order to educate the people how to analyze, how to get the information.
Media literacy, social media literacy.
Yes, and how to react when they are really attacked by all these instruments of information.
Well, I definitely want to get back to social media if we have time, but let's move on. Do you think that 2024, going back to the water analogy, of which I now have none, but do you think this was the high watermark? No, I'm fine, thank you. Do you think this was the high watermark for the far right? I have a lot of friends in France, and many of them believe that that's it for Le Pen. She's not going to go higher. She's never going to be president. That's it. Do you think this is it? Or are we going to be having the same discussion in 5 years' time when a third of the seats in the European Parliament are controlled by these disparate populist manipulators, as Nicolae called them, not me? Markéta.
Okay, it's $1 million question, actually, because sometimes I think that we try to just be able to describe what will happen in 5 years, and what would know what happened in last 5 years. You know, this is sometimes too tricky to be such confident about such a long period in our lives. I feel my share of responsibility of being able to prevent such a scenario in my country, in a European level as well, and I'm taking it, and I'm doing my best to avoid such situation. But again, back to our own history, I remember in the 90s, I was a kid, and in our parliament, there was far-right party, which disappeared and was replaced by another one. And we have another far-right party right now. And what really disturbs me is a trend of, let's say, catch-all parties, which we have one, and they are, seeking for their opportunities, audience, and they know that in this part of the political environment or the scene, they have some kind of, let's say, aims, and they are going this way. But at the same time, you can't see that their voters from past would be angry about this, path, and they would be maybe considering their votes, and they are going with them to this far right. And so this is disturbing me. This disturbs me a lot. And what with social media is connected for me, there is such easy option for all of us, not only for them, but for all of us, to target different groups with different program and these programs can be in opposition to each other. It depends on you if you are so morally, integrated, or you have this integrity not to do so, but they are not, of course, and they are targeting different groups. And if those groups of people from those groups would be in the same room, maybe they would be, beating each other and would be angry to each other, but they will never be, because they are in such bubbles on the internet, and they will never know that for maybe the other audience, they have different program. This is for us not an easy question how to work with. But at the same time, I'm again very optimistic because people, at the end of the day, I think more of them are not such polarized as we are describing.
Right, and also as the media is guilty of. Right, sorry, gentlemen, I'm desperate to go to questions. We will come back in a second to this, but let's just get a couple of questions from the audience. The question that goes back to what we were just discussing is from Juraj Petrovic. He says, are media really still the main opinion former? Haven't they been challenged by social media? Because now people do get their opinions, including political opinions, from social media, and lots of populists don't even appear in the media anymore. They just tweet, or X, whatever you're supposed to do these days.
But look,
Szymon.
this is the thing which is worrying me the most. As Markéta said, far-right parties are coming, going, that can be ups and downs. But the real fundamental problem is that I think we gave out the keys, the secret code to the nuclear weapon of the democracy to the guys from TikTok, from Twitter. Look, we are all in TikTok. Who rules TikTok? Storytelling, Chinese algorithms. We are all tweeting, and we are so happy if we are receiving a big audience on Twitter. And who owns Twitter and is making money out of this? The guy who is sending Cybertruck to Ramzan Kadyrov, and the guy who is openly supporting and taking
part. He denies
part
that, to be fair. I don't think he's ever actually admitted sending.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it was just an accident. We are pretty sure about it.
Got the order online.
Kadyrov mentioned it. But look, he's taking part openly in the political process with no responsibility at all. And we are letting him doing this by supporting his business. We are like sheep sometimes, going to the slaughterhouse, singing hallelujah and kumbaya together, right? We have to have our eyes wide open. I can remember last remark when Yuval Noah Harari was in Warsaw and giving a lecture. I was there with the group of young people, and there's one question from the audience. What would be your first decision being the president of the Republic of Poland? And he said, resignation, immediately. Resignation. Why? Because I'm a public intellectual, and doing politics is a completely different thing, right? We need skillful people. We don't need celebrities. We don't need another businessman who is doing his or her project in politics. We need people who are dedicated to the public service. Yeah. If we will understand it, it will be all okay. Because if you will engage people into politics, I'm telling you, the cure, it's turnout. If you will see people at the polling point, they will be going to vote, we will be safe. People are much wiser than politicians are.
Right. I think Nicolae wants to come in. Just to say that if you also want to pose a question now, not through your app, I think Martin does. I'll come to you in 1 second. Anybody else, please raise your hand. But first,
Robert,
Nicolae, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, you ask what we will face after 5 years.
Yeah.
So if we will continue to discuss and to analyze the etymology of the words, if we will continue to complain in the front of the public, I am sure that after 5 years, this stage will be occupied by the far extremists, and they will analyze what did the democratic parties to lose the power. So if we don't reconnect with the people, if we don't come with policies and solutions, if we don't take the responsibilities. If we don't bring new people in the politics to be able to do things, for sure, in 5 years from now, somebody else will analyze everything.
Okay, Lauri, and then if we can get a microphone to Martin.
Well, I totally agree with my Romanian colleague that media literacy is important, and it's not important only in the schools, but it is also important that we'll bring this knowledge also for the grown-ups, just to bring this awareness of this what echo chambers and information bubbles are, and actually how they have been manipulated by the social media, and why actually also the alternative position is important, and what is the role of the media here. And I would say that if we have to, don't blame actually also the media, because the media lived also through quite difficult times as this transition from the newspapers to digital media is still ongoing process, and the media is facing many challenges. So therefore, we should be also as supportive as possible for media and look them as a partners, because we all actually standing for one thing. We are staying and standing for democratical free society, and this is for what we are standing for, and we are all together in this fight. Okay. Of course, if we are in this political debate, we are in the other sides of frontier. So, but still, we are actually standing for the same things.
Right. Thank you, Lauri. We have a question. Could you introduce yourself? And I will remind you of the GLOBSEC rule, that the first person in this room to say this is less of a question and more of an observation has to buy drinks for everybody in that room. Is it on? No.
No, maybe.
You can shout and I can repeat it. Yeah, just tell me the question, Martin. I'll
No, wait, they are coming with.
Martin,
so you know
Perfect.
me, Rob. I will pose a question. Okay. Martin Poliacik, I'm an associate fellow here in GLOBSEC. And I will touch upon what was said here, that we are right. So we are the holders of the truth, right? And this is what we always tell against the populists, that they are not right and we are right, and we think it's enough. So
what's the question then, Martin?
Harari always says that we think in stories. We're not thinking in truth or facts. And this is what the populists are actually using against us. They have a story about collapse of a civilization. They have a story about someone who's always, pulling the strings.
You're risking a huge bar bill here, Martin.
Right.
What's
so
the question?
The question is, what is our story to contradict?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if we want the truth to win, we have to stop relying on it.
Excellent. Panel, what is our story? We hear so much of their story, of Elon's story and Donald's story. What is our story?
The reality.
Reality.
Our story should be very well fit into the reality, because what Martin said regarding delivering stories, I don't think they are that clever to create the stories and to deliver the stories. They are receiving the stories, and this is part of the information war. So it's very easy to find those kind of people, easy to be manipulated, and good enough to manipulate the others. And they are, as you said, delivering those kind of stories, and people are believing them. That's why I do really insist on education and training the people how to get the information from social media and for all these instruments which are leveraged by those manipulators, which are delivering stories.
Okay. I do have one more, very, very briefly, Szymon, if you can, just in a couple of seconds. Lauri?
Very short answer. Our stories, our virtues, this is human rights, freedom, quality. These are actually this is our story, and actually this works with even more people than the other stories. So therefore, I think that this is the reality what we are facing in a daily basis on the streets with the people we met and we meet.
Szymon.
I think that, that people know that something's going on, and we saw it in our last elections in October. People just went to vote in an enormous number because they even sometimes cannot express what's going on, but they can feel that this is the difficult time and they want to take the responsibility. I came from a very polarized country. This polarization is destroying us, destroying our society, making us vulnerable, and when we are divided, it's always easy to play the game with us. So I'm always telling that our story should be that we are not only taking people from something, we are not only saving people from this party or this guy or far right or conspiracy theory or whatever, but we are leading them somewhere. That we have the idea, that we have the project, that we have the dream we believe in. There is a lot about fear, a lot about, some dangers, but we are not dreamers anymore, in European politics.
Right.
We are trying to keep safe. We are not dreamers. People want us to be dreamers, to show them the options, to show them that everything will be fine.
Okay.
Because finally it will be fine.
Right. I want to ask one more question. I'm very, very conscious of the time running out, but there is one question I really wanted to ask you, because you're all, experienced politicians and you have extremely high political positions in your own countries. And presumably, I know you do, you have working relationships with people that we would call populist and extremist and Eurosceptic and maybe even neo-fascist and God knows what. Do you have any positive examples of pragmatic cooperation with the people in your parliaments, people of very different political colours, that you see as perhaps a way to move forward and get beyond this divide?
Actually,
very, very briefly.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah, I had no chance to answer the question from the audience, so just briefly, I like to quote Madeleine Albright. Democracy has to deliver. And it's very important to have it on mind, and it means, for myself, the story is success in the many ways of the meaning of this word, because it has different meaning for many people, but it means great life conditions for them. And the umbrella is, of course, security, but then on other levels we have other prosperity, education, and so on. And it's as well how we can cope with our colleagues. So it's not easy, I would say, in our parliament, and this term it's really tough.
But you still say hello to Tomio Okamura in the canteen?
Of course,
you still
I have
coffee
to.
with him?
I do so, and I think respect is necessary to have to each other, and to show it,
right,
and to be able not to pay attention only to ourselves, but as well to be able to listen to the others.
Sure, okay.
It's not
Nicolae,
easy sometimes.
from Romania, any tips on how to...
So, yeah, we are human beings, we are very open, we can sit in front of each other, drink coffee, but we cannot discuss about values. We cannot discuss about democracy, rule of law, and all these issues. What we did in Romania as a center-right party, we create a coalition with the center-left party, and we create that stability before the war started in Ukraine and lead the country, as Szymon said, to this time,
right,
without having too much troubles. And it's an example that two political forces, which used to fight historically,
yep,
find the way to sit at the same table and to deliver to the people what, yep, they were expecting for.
Okay, Szymon.
We have one such a party in our parliament, and even one of my deputies is from this party. I'm in Confederația. It's very complicated relationship because they have very big number of internal divisions in their own network. But of course, there are some things in which there is a field to cooperate when it comes to, I don't know, transparency of the processes in the country and others, and we will be always in conflict on other things. But, you know, one of the most educative moments in my short career of being Speaker of the Sejm was
Very
when
briefly.
I organized kindergarten in Sejm.
Right.
You know, it was, for me, it was a game changer.
Yeah.
I organized kindergarten for deputies, you know, who are very busy, and now they can just, you know, send the child to and it will be taken care of, having meals, you know, everything.
Example.
And all the people from far right and far left are sending their kids there.
Excellent.
And this
I like
is the perfect platform to discuss about politics in future, believe me.
20, 30 seconds, Lauri.
I would say that patience works actually, and it works in two ways. If you are listening them and trying to reach into some kind of understanding, normally it's not possible. But on the other hand, if they are always enforcing themselves, they reach into the level where the tensions inside themselves is so high, then the probability that they will going to divide is very high. And actually we had one such a party in Estonian parliament, and there is now two, because they got so much tensions in between themselves, so they divided.
Okay.
So this is, and therefore I am talking about the patience.
Right, excellent. Patience, dialogue, and sitting down, having a cup of coffee or a cup of tea with your opponent. Well, thank you very much indeed to our excellent panel. Please join me in thanking once again Markéta, Pekarová, Adamová, Nicolae, Szymon, Hołownia, and Lauri Hussar from Estonia. And just to wrap up the day, please welcome back Kim Dozier.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rob. And I just want to wrap up for the day. We've ended with a lively panel, kept everyone intellectually engaged all day. I've been watching on YouTube. So for today, opening our first meeting in Prague, we've had presidents, prime ministers, senior ministers. We've had the president of the European Parliament, the president of the European Commission, Deputy Secretary General of NATO, and many business and thought leaders. Topics covered today have included restarting the European economy, steps towards peace in Ukraine, the future of cybersecurity and geotech, to the future of transatlantic relations. I want to read you some key quotes, and I'm going to walk over here so I don't keep giving you all my back. So Ursula von der Leyen said, Central Europe is not only geographically at the heart of Europe, but it's also politically and strategically central to the future of the European Union. And from President Petr Pavel, to achieve a just and lasting peace, we must continue to provide sufficient and predictable support for Ukraine. Russia must grow to an understanding that persisting in this misguided war will no longer be in their interest. Now, just a couple of housekeeping rules. If you are coming to the GLOBSEC award dinner, invitation only, buses leave at 10-minute intervals from 1910 to 1930, so be sure to catch one. And if you're not going to the award ceremony, please enjoy Prague's nightlife. Tomorrow we begin bright and early at 8:45 on the Havel stage with opening remarks from the Czech Minister of Foreign Affairs, followed by a full day of panels and discussions. Thank you very much.
Good.